The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. while I was reviewing game footage in my home office. Subject line, immediate termination, coach position. My name is Ryan Matthews, 39 years old, and until that Tuesday morning, head basketball coach at Lincoln High School in Denver, Colorado. I read the message twice, my coffee growing cold in my hand. After 12 years of building this program from nothing into a state championship contender, they were letting me go via email. The reason given was budget cuts, but I knew better. This had fingerprints all over it. 2 months earlier, the school board had hired a new athletic director, Brad Stevenson, fresh out of college administration, with big ideas about modernizing high school sports. He'd made it clear from day one that he thought I was old school, stuck in outdated coaching methods that didn't align with his vision. The real issue started when I refused to bench Marcus Williams, my starting point guard, for the season. Marcus came from the rough side of town, single mother working 2 jobs, grades struggling but not failing. Stevenson wanted him off the team to send a message about academic standards. I'd spent 3 years mentoring that kid, watching him grow not just as a player, but as a young man. His basketball scholarship to Colorado State was his ticket out. I'd told Stevenson that Marcus was improving academically and deserved our support, not punishment. My exact words were that real coaching meant developing the whole person, not just cutting loose anyone who required extra work. Stevenson's face had gone red during that meeting, but he'd backed down temporarily. The next week, I noticed parents being called into meetings I wasn't invited to. Hushed conversations in hallways that stopped when I approached. Anonymous complaints to the school board about my coaching style, claims I was too demanding, that I wasn't properly developing bench players. Then came the surprise inspection of my budget management. For 12 years, I'd run a clean program, never a single violation or overspend. Suddenly, they were questioning every equipment purchase, every travel expense, every tournament fee, looking for something, anything to justify what they'd already decided. I drove to the school that morning, knowing my key card would probably be deactivated, but wanting to clean out my office before the students arrived. The hallways were empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of floor wax and teenage possibility that had been my world for over a decade. My office was small, but every inch told a story. Championship banners, team photos spanning 12 seasons, scholarship letters from players who'd made it to college, thank you notes from parents whose kids had found direction through basketball. 12 years of building something meaningful, reduced to whatever would fit in cardboard boxes. As I packed, I found the folder I'd been keeping for months. Documentation of Stevenson's questionable decisions, his inappropriate comments about certain players, the way he'd been steering Booster Club donations toward his pet projects rather than equipment the teams actually needed. I'd been gathering evidence not for revenge, but because something about him had never felt right. The door opened behind me. Tom Bradley, the assistant principal and wrestling coach, someone I'd worked with for 8 years. Tom looked around the half-empty office, shaking his head with the frustration of someone who'd seen too many good people destroyed by politics. He told me this was wrong, that the whole coaching staff was furious, that parents were already calling the school demanding explanations. The football coach was considering resignation in protest, the volleyball coach was updating her resume, and the track coach was talking to lawyers about wrongful termination procedures. He said Stevenson had convinced the board that bringing in younger, cheaper coaches would revitalize all the athletic programs, that we were resistant to change and holding back progress. The man had painted us as dinosaurs clinging to outdated methods, while he represented the future of Lincoln athletics. He'd used our success against us, arguing that any decent coach could have achieved what we had with the talent we'd been given. I asked Tom if he knew who was replacing me. His expression darkened, anger flashing in his eyes as he told me about Kyle Stevenson, Brad's 24-year-old nephew fresh out of college with no head coaching experience. The kid had played Division III basketball at a small liberal arts school and thought that qualified him to run a state-level program with serious college recruitment implications. Kyle had been hanging around the athletic department for weeks, shadowing his uncle, taking notes during practices he wasn't supposed to attend, making suggestions about offensive strategies he'd learned from YouTube videos. He'd approached several of my players individually, promising them more playing time and relaxed academic requirements if they supported the coaching change. That's when the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. This wasn't about budget cuts or modernization or even personality conflicts. This was about nepotism, about clearing the way for family members while destroying everything experienced coaches had built. It was about creating jobs for relatives regardless of qualifications, consequences, or impact on student athletes. I thought about my players, especially the seniors who'd worked 4 years toward a state championship run, now facing their final season under someone who'd never coached a varsity game. Marcus Williams, whose college scholarship depended on having strong senior season statistics. Jennifer Park, whose Division I volleyball offers were contingent on maintaining her basketball conditioning. David Torres, whose leadership development was preparing him for a military academy appointment. These kids deserved better than being experimental subjects for an unqualified coach hired through family connections. They'd earned the right to compete at the highest level with experienced leadership, not to be sacrificed for someone's career advancement scheme. I finished packing in silence, Tom helping me carry boxes to my truck. As we loaded the last one, he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. The Booster Club's annual fundraising dinner was next week, where they had announced the coaching changes. Stevenson planned to present it as exciting new direction for Lincoln Athletics. That night, I sat in my garage going through those files I'd collected. Financial irregularities in how Stevenson allocated athletic department funds. Email chains showing he'd promised coaching positions to multiple family members across different sports. Records of how he'd manipulated parent feedback to justify his decisions. But the real smoking gun was a series of text messages I'd screenshotted months earlier when my phone accidentally picked up his conversation with Kyle during a school visit. They'd been discussing not just the coaching job, but how to split the additional income from summer camps and private training sessions. Revenue that was supposed to go back into the program. The next morning, I called Janet Morrison, the school board member who'd always supported our basketball program. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop away from the school. I brought everything. Janet went pale as she reviewed the documents. She said the board had been told the coaching change was necessary due to budget constraints, that my salary was unsustainable. She had no idea about the nepotism angle or the financial regularities. I asked her what could be done. She said the board meeting was in 3 days before the booster dinner. If she presented this evidence properly, it would definitely change the conversation. That afternoon, my phone started ringing. Player after player calling to tell me they'd heard the news, that it wasn't fair, that they wanted to do something. Marcus Williams drove to my house, tears in his eyes, telling me I was the only coach who'd ever believed in him. I told each of them the same thing: focus on basketball, respect whoever comes next, and don't let this distract from their goals. What I didn't tell them was that I was far from finished fighting for the program we'd built together. The school board meeting was packed. Parents, players, teachers, community members who'd followed our program's rise. Stevenson sat in the front row with Kyle beside him, both looking confident that this was just a formality. Janet Morrison called for discussion of the athletic department changes. She stood up and announced that new information had come to light regarding the decision-making process. Then she began reading from my documentation. The room went silent as she detailed the financial irregularities, the nepotism, the way parent feedback had been misrepresented. Stevenson's face went from confident to confused to panicked as the evidence mounted. When Janet finished presenting the evidence, board member after board member asked pointed questions that Stevenson couldn't adequately answer. Why hadn't they been informed about Kyle's relationship to the athletic director? Why were successful coaches being replaced if budget wasn't really the issue? Where exactly had the redirected booster funds gone, and who had authorized payments to contractors with personal connections to administrative staff? Board member Thompson, who'd initially supported the coaching changes, stood up and demanded a complete accounting of all athletic department expenditures over the past year. He wanted to know how much money had been diverted from its intended purposes, which vendors had received contracts without proper bidding processes, and what oversight mechanisms had failed to detect these irregularities. The questions kept coming, each one more damaging than the last. How many other coaching positions were being planned for family members? What qualifications did Kyle actually possess beyond his family relationship? Had any of the anonymous complaints against coaches been verified or investigated? Why hadn't successful programs been protected during budget discussions? Stevenson tried to defend himself, claiming everything had been above board, that the coaching changes were still the right move for the program's long-term success. He argued that bringing in fresh perspectives would energize the athletic department, that younger coaches would relate better to contemporary student athletes, that cost savings were essential given district budget constraints. But his explanation sounded hollow when confronted with actual documentation showing systematic corruption and nepotism. When pressed about the financial irregularities, he claimed they were accounting errors that would be corrected. When asked about Kyle's qualifications, he insisted that fresh thinking was more valuable than experience. When confronted with the text messages about monetizing programs, he dismissed them as taken out of context. The community wasn't buying it. Parents stood up to speak during the public comment period, praising coaches who'd been terminated and questioning the wisdom of destroying successful programs. Former players testified about the positive impact experienced coaches had made on their lives and careers. Community leaders expressed concern about the message these decisions sent about Lincoln's commitment to excellence. One by one, the board members who'd initially supported Stevenson's plan began backing away from their previous positions. The evidence was too overwhelming, the community opposition too strong, the potential legal liability too significant to ignore. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that the athletic department overhaul would not proceed as planned. The board voted to postpone all coaching changes pending a full investigation into athletic department management. They also voted to place Stevenson on administrative leave effective immediately. 2 weeks later, the investigation concluded. Stevenson was terminated for financial misconduct and nepotism. Kyle's coaching offer was rescinded. The board offered me my position back with a formal apology and a contract extension. I accepted, but only after securing guarantees about program autonomy and protection for my players from future political interference. The first practice back, Marcus Williams made the shot that would eventually help us win the state championship 3 months later. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply ensuring that truth comes to light and good work is allowed to continue. Stevenson found another job in a different district, but his reputation in Colorado education was finished. Kyle went back to substitute teaching in weekend recreational leagues. As for me, I'm still coaching at Lincoln High 5 years later, but my role has evolved beyond just basketball. The district appointed me as Director of Athletic Integrity, a new position created to prevent future corruption and ensure that all sports programs operate with transparency and accountability. I work with coaches across all levels to develop ethical leadership practices and maintain the highest standards of program management. The experience taught me that protecting what you've built requires constant vigilance and the courage to stand up for principles even when it's personally costly. It also showed me that communities will support integrity when they understand what's at stake, but only if someone is willing to present the truth clearly and completely. Marcus Williams graduated with honors and earned his degree from Colorado State, later returning to Lincoln as an assistant coach while pursuing his teaching certification. His scholarship opened doors not just for him, but for his younger brothers who saw education as a pathway to opportunity. The family's transformation from struggling to thriving became a model for other students facing similar challenges. Jennifer Park received her Division I volleyball scholarship and went on to captain her college team, using the leadership skills she'd developed during our program's crisis. She frequently returns to speak with current athletes about perseverance and the importance of supporting teammates during difficult times. Her example continues to inspire young women in our community to pursue athletic and academic excellence. David Torres was accepted to the Air Force Academy and commissioned as an officer, crediting his high school athletic experience with teaching him the leadership principles that shaped his military career. He stays in touch with our program, occasionally visiting to share his experiences with current players who are considering military service. The championship banner from that year hangs in my office alongside photos from dozens of other seasons, but it represents more than just athletic achievement. It symbolizes what's possible when people choose to fight for what's right rather than accepting what's convenient. It reminds me daily that building something worthwhile requires not just skill and dedication, but the moral courage to protect it from those who would corrupt it for personal gain. The investigation and its aftermath created lasting changes that extend far beyond Lincoln High School. Our story became a case study in educational ethics courses, demonstrating how corruption can infiltrate even successful programs and how community action can restore integrity. Other districts have adopted policies and procedures based on what we learned during our crisis. Today, I continue working with young athletes who face challenges similar to those my players encountered during the Stevenson era. The difference is that now we have systems in place to protect them from administrative corruption and political interference. The program operates with transparency and accountability that ensures every decision serves student interests rather than adult agendas. Sometimes late at night, when I'm reviewing game film or planning practice sessions, I think about how different things might have been if I'd simply accepted that termination email and walked away quietly. Thousands of future student athletes would have suffered under corrupt leadership. Millions of dollars in public funds would have been stolen. Countless opportunities for personal growth and achievement would have been lost to nepotism and greed. The choice to fight back wasn't about revenge or personal vindication. It was about responsibility to the young people who depended on our program for guidance, opportunity, and hope. It was about protecting something valuable from those who saw it only as a source of personal profit. It was about ensuring that good work could continue without interference from those who would exploit it for selfish purposes.